CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. Welcome back, everybody. We are here with the man. If you don't know him, it's Trent McJunkin, and he is serious about maintenance management, facilities management, all of it. And because Trent has gone through this journey and is constantly kind of putting it together, feeding his brain, working with his teams. He talks to people about what they're doing when it comes to things like CMMS. And it's not about the product. It's about how do we approach this to do successful implementations. I got this list of things that I want to crack through with you, Trent. So I'm going to bring up that list and we'll knock them out. But first of all, man, it's been a while since I saw you. Thank you for joining me again on CMMS Radio.
Absolutely. It's always a great time to join you on CMMS Radio.
Well, I got to tell you, hanging out with you back in February was a blast. Saw you at the Streamline Asset Management User Conference. Thank you for being on my panel there. You're also going to be on a panel with me at Reliable Plant Conference, which is coming up here June 2nd through 5th out there in Chicago. It's at the Schaumburg Convention Center. So I want to, in advance, thank you for being on that panel with me. It's an honor to share the stage with you.
Oh yeah, that was going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we got a nice lineup, and I'll put some stuff in this episode so people can kind of see it. But we've got a good solid group of heavy hitters, man. It's gonna be fun to add that value for everybody, and we'll have fun with it, man. We'll crush some buzzwords, but we're trying to help people succeed. So that's what it's all about. So let's jump into this right quick. And basically, I'm doing this because there's a group, Engineering Maintenance Solutions, that promotes and hosts a lot of the episodes, all the episodes really, for CMMS Radio. And they're doing a lot around CMMS. And I wanted to get them some insight from someone like you that's like not just boots on the ground, but kind of on all sides of this thing to just crack through this list. So we're going to jump straight in. And first off, if I ask you this simple question that's really big, what would be your first answer on how to successfully implement a CMMS?
I would say understand that it is simple, but it's not easy. And that you have to think like a technician and think like a shareholder at the same time.
I like that, because you're saying a lot with a really direct kind of approach. And that reminds me of this idea of making really strong business cases, but strong business cases tend to include everyone.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. All right, let's try to knock out this next one. What do you think would be common CMMS implementation mistakes, and what have you done to avoid them?
So I don't think there's a mistake-proof implementation with a CMMS. I think you go in understanding that you're going to make some missteps and you're going to have to redirect. But I think a lot of people go in with, I have all of these complaints about my current CMMS platform or what I didn't like about all my other ones, but they go in without writing all these things down. Write it on a whiteboard. How does everything need to go from work order creation all through the life cycle of equipment being worked on? What are the feedback loops like? Understand all the ins and outs before you even start talking to a company. Work through all these things. What's your wish list? Because you're in control, and it's only going to be as good as you want it to be and what you ask for.
Yeah, that's so a theme that's been kind of popping up throughout the years and lately a lot is when you're doing something like that and you do start talking to CMMS companies, or maybe you even select one. Have you ever had this experience where somebody is trying to tell you how to change how you operate in order to meet what they know or what they show or what their solution does? Is that something that still happens a lot out there?
Yeah, for sure. There's best practices, and those are all great references. But use it as a reference. A best practice for one industry or one facility may be detrimental to you. I think a lot of people get jammed up by thinking if I take all these good things and plug them into a CMMS, it'll turn into a great thing. Well, it actually may just be bogged down and you're not going to be effective. Take what's the fundamentals and add to it as you grow and as you scale.
That's good. I like it. And I know we've talked about it before where, we're dealing with things like, asset hierarchies and all that. But let me get to this next one, because I think this is one of the sweet spots. Let's say you've got your CMMS, whether you're getting a new one, sticking with your old one, whatever it might be. What are some of your kind of insights, experiences? What would you say when it comes to training your team on a new CMMS? But I'm kind of mixing in there if maybe it's not a new one, maybe you have one. How do you approach the training? What can be done kind of right, and what tends to be a challenge there?
I think you have to start with your leadership team and say, all right, what type of information do we need to gain from the technicians on the floor? And what information do we need to present out to tell that story of how we need to run the business more effectively, whether that is to get capital approved, what's the story you want to tell, and what data do you need from the techs to tell that? And that breaks down into why do I need the technician to input this data appropriately with the right level of detail, and that'll tell you how you need to train your technicians. Everybody writes the same work order the right way, and here's why. Here's why it matters to you. And if you don't get them to buy into the why, then this is going to be flavor of the month. If they don't say the value add, if it doesn't make them more effective to make better decisions faster, they're not going to buy in.
And that goes both directions, right? Because I think about the idea of being, maybe around or on a team or anything like that, and we've got something we got to go do some training on, and everybody's like, man, we got to stop what we're trying to get done to go do this training. But why is that something that, kind of a two-part question? Why is that something that we need to change, and what's the best approach, at least that you've experienced, to kind of change that and get the front line, the operators, the maintenance technicians, to say, oh yeah, we're about to do this training, and they're like into it rather than grumbling about it?
I think you don't have a ton of meetings and closed rooms. Bring them in and say, hey, what is frustrating about our existing system or systems you've worked with? And what works great about our existing system or systems you've worked with? How does this work to make you more effective? What are some things? And they may not have the right idea on how it needs to happen with the workflow, but they know what it takes to do their job effectively. And with that think tank that you're putting together, I'm assuming that you're hiring high level, high skilled people, and you want their input. You want to capture that tribal knowledge of how things will be more effective and put that all into one thought process.
I like that, because it's not just about including them and giving them a voice, but you said something really important. They know what they're doing, and
Yeah.
that's the one thing you don't want to leave off the table when it comes to your approaches to training and this implementation. So, what about on data migration? So, data migration, we've all heard the horror stories, we've all heard the successes, and somewhere in between. What do you think are some good approaches on data migration tips when you're going from one system to another, or even if you're launching a brand new one, never had one before? What would you have to share on that?
I think you have to begin with the end in mind. If you're going to integrate with other systems, are there common asset tags or what you call this thing? The integrator may have called this asset something, but internally we call it something else. And really go in to say, all right, in 10 years, what data is important to the technician to solve problems faster? If you're in the facilities world, I mean, are you looking at an office? Do you need to know the carpet tile number, the ceiling tile, the paint color, what key gets me into that building? All those things, is that in your asset data? If you're in a manufacturing environment, do you need the motor nameplate data? All your bill of materials. How do these things work at full rate with the CMMS implemented completely?
And another thing I would throw in there is any existing data when you're in the midst of this data migration. looking at it and assessing whether you really need it anymore or not. Because I've heard stories already about, I mean, I've heard it for years, where data comes over and there's this huge list of PMs on equipment that no longer exists, or there's misnaming, or the incorrect naming conventions from some legacy system or somebody's access database that they built. No, I mean, they're trying to get stuff done. I'm not trying to crush anybody, but that's that one opportunity where I think a lot of companies during the data migration, they miss an opportunity to take a beat. Let's go through this and let's understand what really matters. And I would add to it, your CMMS providers should be in on that rather than telling you. They should be saying, hey, let's get together and go through this. Is this valuable? Does this work? Is this part of what you're doing now? Or is it garbage?
Right. And we've heard garbage in, garbage out. And that reigns true with any CMMS implementation. And you have to think, it's our safety blanket. We have this data, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And sometimes we don't want to let go of it. But sometimes it takes a good provider like a CMMS implementation team that'll tell us, hey, this may not be of value to you in a year. Let's dump what we don't need and take what we do need and just take the leap.
Yeah, and maybe keep that old data somewhere so you have it if you ever needed it, but get it out of your way so you can start moving better, more efficient, because we don't want to make ineffective processes efficient, because now you're doing more of the wrong stuff that doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Something I wasn't planning to ask, but do you find that there's value when it comes to this stage, when it comes to the actual implementation? You're deploying and implementing the CMMS. Do you think it's important that the CMMS provider you work with has individuals that have actually done your job, that really understand, or at a minimum, do an incredible job of understanding how you do what you do? Does that make a difference compared to the ones that are just green and don't know anything?
I think that is the most critical piece for me personally. If I understand that I'm talking to someone who at least has the resources on the team, who's been the boots on the ground, and they understand that, hey, here's why this is important to me and how I drive the business. They know more than the software side. They can say, hey, that sounds like what another customer is doing, and they can connect us and say, hey, here's some best practices that our other users are using. And we just gain all that wisdom without having to learn things the hard way.
Yeah, that's and those individuals tend to do a better job of listening only because they've been through it, or even if they haven't, they've been around others on their team that say, "Hey, you got to pay attention at this point," because they're trying to tell you how they actually succeed. So that's good stuff. That's why I wanted to ask about that. What about the preventive maintenance planning? Is there an approach that you tend to use or leverage? And I'm not saying it's cookie cutter, but a generalization around what things during CMMS implementation, as it relates to preventive maintenance planning, should people pay attention to or be aware of?
I think if there's a way for you to understand what assets have a preventive maintenance plan and what doesn't, that's a great time for you to kind of work with your team and say, hey, what PMs are junk? What's not effective? And really look at, are we saying check motor? Are we saying check bearing? Uh, Now's a good time to do some good PM optimization on our critical assets since we're already trying to embrace a little bit of change. Uh, and just working from there, working on your most critical assets first and then moving down the line.
Yeah, and I see in the background we've got maintenance and reliability best practices by Ramesh Gulati. And what's really interesting about that, this was not planned. Can you see the shirt that I'm wearing?
Nice shirt.
Yeah, so shout out to, of course, Ramesh and George Williams and the whole team over there at Reliability X, because the whole time I'm like, man, I got to say something about that. And a lot of what we're talking about, there's things in there, but you happen to be, you're a CMRP, you understand manufacturing, and you understand facilities management, which those two things sometimes, are really, really different. But do you find that to be kind of a more blended thing when it comes to CMMS deployment, or does it cause a little bit of a a challenge to roll out both types of programs in a single solution?
It may be that I didn't start my career in FM, but I think it's easier for us because with the equipment maintenance side, it's all about returning the equipment to service as quickly as possible. And with the FM side, there's a piece of that, but there's also restoring customer service as quickly as possible. So you go out with that approach to solve problems faster and make better decisions. I think that really makes both of them more similar than they are different.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you because I've always thought that you can kind of adapt and leverage the learnings in both of these spheres, and there's a lot of overlap. And rather than allowing it to cause confusion, you start to look for where there's the alignment, and then kind of manage your one-offs from there. What about you mentioned a little bit earlier about asset criticality. So when there's equipment criticality, these pieces of equipment are more likely to cause entire line downtime, something like this. Um, what do you think of when it comes to optimizing asset hierarchies? What do you have as far as an approach, or where somebody should start if they want to do that as it relates to their CMMS implementation?
So I think that's where you're going to pay most of your attention during the implementation to make sure you have drawings, you have good historical data. You may have to do some things in the field to do some visual management to make these assets better to work on and easier to work on from that CMMS. Uh, but I wouldn't get too deep in the weeds on what a best practice is for criticality and hierarchy. Your switch gear and your utilities are going to shut you down first, and after that, it's don't overcomplicate it. If you need some help, talk to somebody in the industry. They'll be happy to explain it to you, but don't overcomplicate asset hierarchy.
I like that. And sometimes when it comes to the CMMS that you have to understand some of its limitations. But if most of it is really good, your team's using it, they like it, there's typically a way forward. But something I always add in when it comes to asset hierarchies is the depth or levels to which that solution can go. But if you're trying to set up everything right now and we got to know every little thing, that's going to take a long time and you're never going to get it. You're not going to get anything done. So that's kind of what you were saying. Here's a big one. And you can approach this any way you want. Good, bad, something in the middle. I ain't worried about that. But how is AI, artificial intelligence, transforming CMMS platforms in your view so far?
So far, I think it's a really great tool. Um, I'm a big fan of Upkeep, but they have something called closeout tools or closeout notes, and it gives a great summary of everything that the technician inputs into the system for a work order. So they can go and it's auto generated an AI uh, summary. But with that being said, AI is only as good as the data you give it. So don't think it's a one-stop shop and it's going to replace these craftspeople because it's not. It's going to be a workforce multiplier for your team. If they have strong fundamentals, which you have to have strong fundamentals, AI can really take you to that next level.
I like it. And the whole concept here is your CMMS is a tool. It's there to, act as a force multiplier for your team that is built on and moving well with those basic fundamentals in mind. It plays when it comes to leadership. You need leadership buy-in, you need frontline buy-in, and everybody in between. You need people to use these tools in a way where they're monitoring it and not setting it and forgetting it, because especially with AI, you don't want to do that. And a lot of people think I'm anti-AI. I'm not anti-AI. What I am is I want people to use their machine learning or large language models effectively and then leverage it for efficiency. And I'm certainly not an expert, but I got a lot of friends that are. As you know, we know a lot of them in common, and they'll tell you the truth about that stuff. And I think it's going to get better and better. I think there's still going to be a washout. But man, first of all, Trent, I know you're super busy. I want to thank you for helping me crack through this list. And we're going to get into this stuff a little bit deeper. We'll probably talk about it in June. But is there anything else that you would want to add as we close out this conversation? I like to give you the kind of last response there before we close the show.
Yeah, I think one thing that I underestimated before I started implementing a CMMS was the importance of the feedback loop, especially for the technician. Go through this. I love putting things on a whiteboard. Find out where's the cliff? Where am I going to walk off the cliff? Where does data go to die? If the technician comes in and he says, "Hey, I got this running now, but somebody's going to need to follow up on it," is it easy for him to write a follow-up work order or call out the part that he needs to get it fixed correctly, or does that data just go to die somewhere? So watch out for those pitfalls with your feedback loops.
Nice. Trent McJunkin, thank you very much for being here with me on CMMS Radio, man. I appreciate you, brother.
Oh, yeah.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.